What year were you born?
1921.
Where were you born?
I was born at my mom and daddy's house up on the Sealy Creek Road.
Who are your parents?
Everett Wilfon Clay and Lily Florence Kincaid Clay.
What are some of your favorite memories with your brothers and sisters?
We played a lot of games together. We had my father had a farm, and he had horses, and we rode horses rather much. And we had old bicycles that we would put together, or pieces that we'd put together, make a bicycle, and we'd ride up and down the hill on the bicycles. We played games like hopscotch and marbles and that kind of game together. We always had a lot of fun. Well, let me tell you something funny about that house. The house that I was born in was sold to somebody. I don't remember the people that bought it, but later that same house was remodeled and made into a church. And after that, they moved that part of the building back and built a real brick church. But I used to tease people and tell them that I was born in the church.
Where was your favorite place to play as a child, and why?
We lived close to a little area that had a lot of trees and a lot of rocks and things underneath of it. And we would go out and build little playhouses, and we would use the rocks to make the lines between the rooms. And we'd go by get some old empty cans and pretend like that we were cooking, and we'd put the little rocks in the cans that was our food. And we had little doorways with empty spaces that showed where the rooms had the doors and the windows. We played there a lot. We'd even go out and pick up grass and leaves off of trees and everything, and that was our food that we put in the cans.
Did you listen to music as a child?
We had a radio. We didn't have TV. But I remember when we moved to the next house where I really grew up in, we had a radio, and on Saturday night we'd play things like the Grand Ole Opera, that type thing. And we had neighbors that did not have a radio. And almost every Saturday night, they and their two boys would come over to our house to listen to the radio.
What else did you do in your free time?
As I got older, I started doing some work around the house. My daddy still owned the other farm up the Sealy Creek Road, and they would put corn out, and we would actually, later, my sisters and I would hoe the corn or help pick corn or whatever we needed to do with that. And also my daddy later had a dairy farm, and we had a big silo. And I remember that one of my sisters and I used to climb up the ladder on the outside of the silo and shovel out the silage and let it fall down to be fed to the cows. The first school that I went to was up above my daddy's and mama's house. And the first year that I went, we only had one teacher, and it was everything from the grades 1 through 7. And there was other little schools around in the area too, and this one was called Heartland School. We had this one teacher called Mrs. Hood, Mrs. Ben Hood, and she taught all the grades. We had a porch on that school, and we didn't have running water, so we had a big container that would carry water in that had like a little spigot on it, and we would catch drinks of water. We did not have bathrooms, but we had toilets. We had a toilet for the girls and the toilet for the boys, and the teacher would give us some work to do, and while we worked our assignment, she would teach another class. And then I think the third year that I was there, we had another teacher called May Courtney, And she taught the first, second, and third, and this Mrs. Hood taught fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh.
Do you have a favorite memory at your school?
There's one that was sort of funny. On that water cooler that sat out on the front porch, they used to tell that this certain boy peed in it. And we never did know if that was true or not. That was funny. Back in behind our school there was a large, just a real high hill. And when it snowed, we would go out and slide on an old plank or something up and down that hill. And then we'd carry our plank back to the top and slide down again. And that was a lot of fun. The area that was pretty smooth, we played little softball games and things like that.
Where did you go to high school?
Well, I didn't finish at that school because that school closed up when I was in the third grade, and that's when they built Gamewell, and we had classes from the fourth. Well, we had classes from 1 all the way up to the 7th grade at Gamewell. I was there in the 4th, 5th, and 6th, and that was the year that we had those 10 people in the 6th grade, 7th grade. We studied with the 7th grade and then skipped the 7th to go on to the 8th grade. And we went on to Colosseum.
Where did you go to college?
Asheville Teachers College up in Asheville, North Carolina.
How many years did you go there?
I went 4 years, and I took classes so I could become a teacher.
When did you graduate from college?
1938.
Do you remember what it was like graduating from there?
We had a real beautiful church called the chapel, and we actually had our robes on. I think most of the exercise was done outside, but we still went into the chapel for part of the service.
What was your job during college? Did you have one?
Everybody was supposed to do 10 hours of work. And when I first got there, I told my roommate, I said, I need to go. I was told to go to this lady that did help do things like fixing and washing sheets and towels and washcloths and all that kind of pillowcases and all that kind of thing for the faculty. And this lady's name was Miss Roloff. And I went and told Miss Roloff that I was supposed to come to her to get a job. So she gave me a basket of laundry and asked me to fold up the towels and the washcloths and the pillowcases and things and put them up on the shelf. And then the next year I worked 6 months in the kitchen part, helping with serving food and so forth. And then I had a real good friend that was my roommate that worked in a little co-op store. And I was fortunate enough to get to work the last 2 years in that little store, selling maybe a donut and coffee for a nickel or a stamp for 2 or 3 cents.
Where did you teach at?
I taught at Gamewell all the time. I went in as a 5th grade teacher and taught 5th grade 2 years. And then that's when the students returned to Gamewell from Colosseum. And that sort of pushed me out of that classroom, and I went up to the other building in the 4th grade. All the years that I taught, except 2 in the 4th grade.
How many years did you teach?
I started teaching in '43, and I taught till I quit teaching in 1969.
Who is your husband?
S. Ray Moore.
When and where did you meet your husband?
Okay. The husband that I married, the man that I married, when I was a freshman in high school, he was not there because his mother took groceries, farm stuff, to farmer's market. And she had several children, but her husband was not very good about helping her with the gardening and helping her at the farmer's market. So she kept one of the children home every year. And the year that I was a freshman, the boy that I married was not in school. When I was a sophomore, he came back. And even though I actually liked him, but back then we did not date much because we did not have cars, we did not go a lot. But I remember one time I went to a party with him, and everybody had a little piece of paper, and we were supposed to get a name for people that we were going to be walking around with for about 10 minutes, talking and laughing and cutting up. And his name is down on my list. And we went out walking, talking, and when it's 10 minutes is up, we did not go back. We just kept on talking and staying out. But when I was in college, about my junior year, I dreamed about this Ray Moore. And I found his address, and I wrote him a card and told him that I had dreamed about him. And I thought that was odd because later he called me and asked me to come up to Asheville to see me. So he and this other guy came up, and we went out on the town and probably went out to eat and just visited. And they spent the night up there somewhere, maybe in a motel, and then came back the next day, and we drove around and talked and everything. And I never did get to see him much more after that.
How long did you date before you got married?
We actually, by him going into service like he did, we actually did not date but a couple of years before we got married. After he came back from service, he got a job at a shop in Lenore, and I was teaching, and we dated a little bit, but not too much. I would go over to my daddy's store on Saturday sometimes, and his mother, by having that job of going to the farmer's market, he would come and help her. And sometimes he would come down to where we had the store, and we would talk and so forth. And sometimes I would go home with him in the afternoon and visit with his mother and daddy and brothers, I guess. So we didn't actually date too long till he went into service.
When did you get married?
1947.
Do you remember much about your wedding?
Oh, I do. I don't know. We got married at Little John's Church, and we were going to get married Sunday morning before the church service. And I guess we had made this frame that we went up to a neighbor's house and got vines and things and came down and wove that vine in between the slats and all, to have a place that we could stand and get married in the church. And this friend that I taught with played the piano. Ray and I walked up together and got married, and I've forgotten who the preacher was that married us. We had my mama fixed a big dinner that day that she had invited all my friends to come on down and eat lunch. But Ray had invited one of his friends and his girlfriend to come up for the wedding. So when we got down to my mama's house, Ray felt like we needed to leave, so we didn't stay home and eat that lunch with him. We just left on a honeymoon.
Where'd you go on your honeymoon?
Well, it was up in Asheville, but I can't think of the name of the place. On beyond Asheville, we stopped the first night, and I remember we had a real good supper and ate supper there, a real good night there. And then we went on to the next place, and I can't remember the name of it, and they had a lot of cottages that they rented out. Seemed like it was Lake Junaluska. I believe it was Lake Junaluska. And I think we stayed about 2 nights. And then the last night before we came back from our honeymoon, we were up in Virginia, and the motel room was right close to the train track. And I felt like that train ran all night long.
What was your husband's job?
I used to tease people and tell him that he worked on the road, but he actually helped build the road, the real new like road from Lenore to Boone. That's what he was doing first. And then later he got a job in the shop, and he worked at a shop, furniture shop in Lenore for quite a few years. And then he became sheriff of Caldwell County, and was sheriff of Caldwell County for six years, till he had a sudden heart attack and died that night.
What are some of your good memories with them?
Lauren, there was a lot of good memories, but as far as me trying to explain them, I can't. We lived with my mama and daddy until we had 2 children. Our son Kenneth was born in the big house, and Donna was born in the big house. And then we built a new house over on the Morganton Road close to Gamble. And there I had 3 more children.
What was your biggest adventure?
Traveling. I really traveled in almost every state in the United States. Out of the 52 states, or how many we've got, I only missed about 3. I went to Hawaii. I went into Canada. We went over to Nova Scotia. I traveled with a company from down in Hickory, and we just had wonderful, wonderful times traveling. I've been to the Hoover Dam. I've seen those rock mountains out in the west where the president's been carved on the mountain. We went all the way to Key West one time, and we were hoping we could get out on the lake, but it was storming when we got there, and we didn't get to. We just got to spend the night and come back. Key West. Of course, a lot of people go to Key West now, but back then that was very unusual for people to get down there and get across.
Out of all the places you went, what was your favorite?
You know, I wouldn't even try to tell you, because we just had such good times. Even if we hadn't planned the trip 2 or 3 days before they were going to make a trip, and they didn't have a full busload, they would call us and tell us that we might go for a half price, and we just jumped in and went. My granddaughter Rebecca was here at my house one time when I got a letter telling that they were going to Hawaii. She read the letter with me, and I never even particularly thought about going to Hawaii. She was in the 6th grade at school. She went home and told her mom and daddy that I had a chance to go to Hawaii and she'd like to go with us. And her dad, who was my son, called me and said, "How interested are you in going to Hawaii?" And I said I hadn't even thought anything about it. He said, "Well, Rebecca really wants to go." And do you know, she got off from school. She took her schoolwork with her. She's in the 6th grade. She took her schoolwork with her to Hawaii and had a wonderful time. I think that was really my favorite one. We drove way up in the eastern part of North Carolina, the United States one time, and we were hoping to see colored leaves. A lot of colored leaves. That was not a good year for colored leaves. And we went all the way up to New York and never did see many colored leaves. I guess the temperature just hadn't been right for the leaves to change that year.
What are some places that you would still like to see?
I really can't think of any. I think if somebody would offer me a paid trip that I had to go for days and days on a bus, I think I would turn it down. We went to a place in Georgia called Round Mountain, Georgia, and it was a very great big old rock with steps up to the top, and we went up, and I can't even remember hardly a restaurant around there. And today on TV, when you see them showing a picture of Round Mountain, you've never seen such a conglomeration of cafes and cabins and hotels and everything around the same place that I went to. There wasn't anything much except a rock. I would get in a car and ride down to the beach, and I'm probably going to be doing that this summer with Vicki. But as far as just getting in a bus now and traveling, I don't even want too much. But I really did enjoy it when I was going.
What are some things about the way teachers teach today and how they are different from how when you teached?
Well, we didn't have all the TV, the computers. When I was teaching, we didn't have things like computers. We didn't have Facebook. We didn't have all those modern things that you have today. If we said do a certain kind of a multiplication problem, you didn't have a little instrument to do it for you. You had to write it down and really multiply it out for yourself. I don't know too much about school, but I know today you don't do a lot of that book work with paper and pencil like we used to do. I don't know. I guess the new is better, or we wouldn't have changed it. I'm not so sure that you even learn the multiplication tables today like we used to.
What are some places in Caldwell County that you got to see as a child that we don't get to see today because they're gone or tore down?
One of the best friends I ever had in my life, I met her because her daddy was a sheriff in Caldwell County. Her name was Faye Rhodes, and they actually lived in an apartment in the courthouse. And they had steps up on the outside. My daddy's store was across the road, and I learned Faye Rhodes from that. And whenever he stopped being sheriff, they moved back out up the Playmore Beach Road. And Faye Rhodes is still living. I believe she's the same age as I am, or maybe I'm 1 year older than her. I'm not so sure, but she's still living. Fort Defiance. I used to take my children to Fort Defiance, and my school children, and we would take bus loads over there and really have a good time. And we'd take picnics over there, and we'd eat. We'd go visit the Fort Defiance, and then just to make a day of it sometimes. And I read the other day that had just about been stopped because people didn't have enough. You don't have enough money to get those buses out and take them up there. That was another place that.
What would you say the key to life is?
Be a good person. Be a good person. Learn to love people. Be friendly with people. Go to church. You don't have to go to church to be good, but I think it does something for you to go to church and hear the singing and hear the preaching and study some about the Bible. I still enjoy going to the ball games. If my daughters and granddaughters would play basketball games, I'd go to them.
Who are some of your role models?
I wouldn't pick out anybody. Miss Leela Tuttle was a role model for me, I guess. She was from the Heartland community, and she never married, but she went to China, and she worked for years and years with the Chinese people, and then came back and would go to the different schools, even when I was teaching, and tell stories about her going over to China. I thought that was something very, very enjoyable that we did.
What is the name of the church you go to now?
Little John's Methodist Church. And it's been that ever since I was little.
What church did you go to when you were little?
Same church.
How long have you been going to church?
I don't remember when I was a baby, but my mama used to remember to take the children that was younger than me when they were little babies, and they'd have a revival or something, you know, at night. She would take a quilt or a blanket and lay it on the floor and lay the child on it that we could take a nap or whatever. Methodist churches don't usually have anything like a baptizing or anything in the water, but they have what they call a sprinkle. When a person belongs to a church, they have a ceremony they call sprinkling. We have communion in our church every so often when we drink the grape juice and the bread. Used to, we had an altar, and we used to go up and kneel around the altar. But since our preachers...
Do you regret anything in life?
You know, you hate to see your parents die. You hate to see your brothers and sisters die. But it was a very sad thing when I lost my husband, as young as we were. But I think he was ready to go. I hope he's going to be in heaven when I get there. I hope I'll get there. And he was a good daddy. He was a good friend. He was a good husband. He used to help in the church a lot. Right before he died, he was helping plan a fellowship hall. But the fellowship hall that we